Hey, nice to have you with us once again. Trade shows are becoming more and more popular. In fact, they've grown into an industry of their own. Now, the question is it viable for companies to participate in them? The costs can be tremendous, which we'll look at in a bit. But first, the CNBC Africa team recently attended the Joburg International Motor Show, where we chatted to a few of the exhibitors to get their take on whether trade shows are a good or a bad return on investment.
I think it's debatable. It depends who you ask, and it depends what you spend on a show like this. I think for Nissan it is definitely something that we look forward to every time it comes around. If you think about the return on investment that you get from a lot of media exposure and the opportunity to showcase your full brand and range of products to consumers, and thousands of them will visit over the 2-week period. So the return on investment is definitely worth it for Nissan.
At a trade show there's a big chance of contacting or getting contacts to private customers, but mostly trade partners that are interested in selling the products, promoting the products further. And at the other end, all the people from the industry are there at the same time, so it's a good opportunity to network and to meet people.
We always try and do a lot of direct selling. We find that interacting with the end user, being the customer, definitely is a win for us. We have been at Automechanica previously, which was more a B2B type show, and that was very beneficial from a business perspective. Gyms for us is a slightly different type show because it's more about B2C, which is direct to the public. And for us, it's really about exposing the brand to Joe Public or the man on the street.
The success is measured via the return on investment we see through media coverage, which almost pays for itself. And then the foot traffic through the doors here. I think in last year's show there was close to 200,000 visitors over the 2-week period. So that's really a chance to have customers touch and feel your products, which is not something they get to do every day.
Trade shows are normally quite expensive, but I think it depends on what you do. You can spend a lot of money at a trade show, or you can keep it as a reasonable cost. And then obviously the question is what you do with the contacts you've generated after the trade show. But what I've also found, it depends a lot on the support we get from the government, for example. And there I must say, in Germany normally where there are a lot of trade shows, support from the German government is very big, very strong. So it helps the trade partners as well.
The negative to trade shows would be first and foremost cost. It's really expensive to be here. Secondly, it's also the cost in terms of time, because it's very demanding on the staff. It's very demanding in terms of the hours that we spend on the show. Those would be the biggest negatives, but the positives, in my perspective, definitely outweigh the negatives.
I think perhaps one of the negatives is just competing with brands that are 2 meters away from you. Of course, consumers have got the ability to walk off your stand very quickly if they're not engaged and interacted with. But that's maybe a challenge to everyone to raise the bar and make sure that people want to be on your stand.
So before we actually came to gyms, because of the high cost that's involved, we actually did a scenario planning or a case analysis whether it was worth us being here. And the one question that came forward was, how can we afford not to be here?
Joining me in the studio now is Nigel Walker. Nigel is chairman of the Exhibition and Event Association of Southern Africa. Nice to have you with us, Nigel.
Thanks.
Some interesting points coming out of there, some of which I'd like to get to in just a moment. But let's start at the very beginning. A very good place to start, as they say in the song. How is the events industry doing at the moment?
Look, I think it's very buoyant. Just this weekend, you've got gyms on. Down at Nasrec in Joburg. At the Dome, we've got a retirement show on. At Santon, we have babies at Barber and Darber. So you get a completely different end of the spectrum, from babies to retirement. And at Gallagher's, we've got health and beauty. Now, those are 4 major venues which are full of exhibitions.
Okay. One weekend, you've got a motoring show, you've got a baby show, you've got a wedding spectacular, you've got another on. Do we have, firstly, enough venues available? And B, do we have enough exhibitors available? And C, do we have enough consumers available to fill all those venues and different types of shows?
I'd say yes. because it's not a flash in the pan. We've got enough venues, particularly in Johannesburg, maybe in Cape Town or Durban at particular times of the year, it can be very stressful. Venues nowadays, there's good demand for exhibitions, confexes, exhibitions at venues, even road shows from some of the major manufacturers would do their own dedicated exhibitions. So it's not really, it's more of a road show for a particular corporate. And do we have enough exhibitors? Well, definitely. Every company, every potential company in the country is a potential exhibitor. It doesn't have to be on the GSE. A family business running out of a home can run an exhibition. We talked about out of the segment, the return on investment. You can place an advert in a newspaper and wait for whoever you're targeting to respond to it. Exhibitions are about face-to-face engagement. It's one of the mediums in which there is no competitor for that engagement. Potentially right now, yes, social media is, because you engage. It's an instant gratification. Well, out of the clip, one of the guys said, if the customer doesn't like your product, he walks off. So how you put and how you exhibit and how you engage with those visitors is more important, most important. Are there enough consumers? Well, I'm sure this weekend there's enough people thinking about babies in the next 6 or 9 months to fill the hall. There's enough of us who drool at the sort of cars on show at the Johannesburg Motor Show. Me and my grey hair, are we ready for retirement?
You'll go to a retirement.
We're going to go to the retirement show. And in between, we have health and beauty. Is there enough? Yes. I think it's a very, very buoyant industry. It's very dynamic. You can get it awfully wrong, but you can get it awfully right. And there's new organisers coming into the marketplace. At the moment, over the last 24 months, major international exhibition organisers have come into the country because they see Africa, South Africa in particular, in its own market, but also as a stepping stone to Southern Africa or Sub-Saharan Africa. Are they bringing in international companies that we haven't seen at exhibitions in South Africa? If you look at Barmer, 6 weeks ago, Barmer filled Gallagher's, a lot of international. Johannesburg, one of those exhibitors sounded like from your clip, sounded like a German exhibitor who was coming in. Yes. Having said that then, how do you go about, because I'm Joe Schmo and I'm trying to sell those glasses to people. How do I go about choosing who I exhibit with? Okay, well, I think it's fraud. There's an exhibition there, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the person arranging the exhibition is the person I should be partnering with. I'm not trying to trash anyone here, but in every industry you get good apples and bad apples. And you get people who are experienced, and you get people who are new entries into the marketplace. You can get a show on shoes and handbags. Whether or not that show will fly depends on who's organising it. They need to target, it's about marketing all the time. I would say to anybody who's saying for the first time exhibitor, do your homework. Look at the organizer. Is he a member of EXA? No guarantee, it's not a guarantee. But how many exhibitions have they organised? What are the checks and balances? What are the money that you're paying up front? How much advertising do you see? Because it's advertising and marketing that gets the feet through the door. Jim's got 200,000 plus feet through the door. Rand show, 250,000. Fantastic, but it's not only about the numbers of feet. They're important for consumer shows. But B2B, business shows, it's a quality. You might have a sector, gynecologists. If you're exhibiting at the annual gynecologist show, and don't have a baby that weekend because there's not a gynecologist around, they'll all be at Sun City. If you're exhibiting there, you capture 90% of your target market in one place over 3 days for the year. So it's worth the price. It can be worth the price. You know who you're getting. Yeah. You need to do your homework. You need to be sensible. You don't just sign on a dotted line and pay over money.
You see, I think that's part of the problem here, though, Nigel, is that a lot of people think that paying the money to be on an exhibition is the end. But that is merely a means to an end, isn't it? I
Absolutely.
mean, it's the same as sports sponsorship. When you see somebody sponsoring the Springbok rugby team, and it's costing X million to sponsor them for a year, they're probably investing the same amount of money in telling people that they are sponsoring the Springbok rugby team. And the same needs to happen with exhibitions. You're going to be exhibiting there. You need to tell people that you're exhibiting there.
Unlike an ad in a printed medium,
Yeah.
you do the artwork, submit the ad, and normally you wait for somebody to phone you, something to happen. At an exhibition, if you don't work that stand for the 3 days, again, out of the clip, one of the guys said how busy, how draining it is on staff. That's a 2 week show. A 3 week show, that staff there are on the floor for 10 hours. It is heavy on staff. That is one thing where you're planning. If you're a one-man band or a small family business, you can't do a 5-day show by yourself. But who do you trust your product, or who knows your product or service better than you?
Yeah.
You need not to go out and drink that night, because the following morning you've got 10 days.
You've got to perform.
10 hours to perform.
Yeah.
And you can sit on your stand waiting for somebody to come to you, or you can do your homework. If you think about an engagement, if you're engaging with somebody for 10 minutes, you can only engage with 6 people in an hour. If you've got 8 hours in the day, it's 50 odd people. If you've got a show of even 3,000 visitors, what happens to the other thousands of people who are walking past your stand? You need to be able to get at the information. It's not a leisurely chat over a braai.
Yeah.
You need to be able to sort out, why is the visitor here? Just as much as the exhibitor has reasons to visit a show, so do visitors. It's not always clear cut. Visitors may be I politely call them tire kickers. They're coming in because it's raining outside. They may be coming in because they're looking for jobs. They may be coming in because they're doing a competitive analysis, and you've now spent half an hour talking to your competitor about
telling him
everything
how you run your business.
but you haven't even asked them. One of the interesting things I always find on exhibitor training is that good salespeople, when they go to visit somebody, they've done their homework beforehand. They know who they're visiting, they know the product that they're going to pitch, they know the client's profile, they often have a buying history, they have all that information to them. At a show,
You got nothing.
you're blind. You're
Yeah.
totally blind. You have got to get that information out of the visitor. And you've got to get it out of the way you ask questions. Don't ask closed questions which can be answered with a yes or no. You've got to interrogate the visitor. You've got to find out, and you've got to rank them. Is this a potential lead? Is it a sale? Which leads back to the ROI. Why are you there?
Because you want money.
Well, not necessarily. You might be one of those out again. Now, the clip was there as a branding exercise. They're not selling cars off the show floor, but they're selling the brand.
We're talking to Nigel Walker, who's chairman of the Exhibition and Event Association of South Africa, talking about exhibitions and events and whether it's worth your while, and if you do think it's worth your while, what you should be doing to get into this industry as a means to sell yourself, your product, or whatever service you have on offer. During the break, we were just talking about individuals on stands and the difference between individual A and B. Now, I think my sort of exhibition reference point would probably be going to exhibitions overseas, where in a lot of cases they are fairly targeted at a certain industry, and they become almost meeting places for contractual re-signings and that sort of thing. But that has changed to a certain degree, hasn't it? Where you've got, as you've said, the mom and pop businesses coming out and saying, hey, you want the best ginger beer in the world? Here it is right here. We make it.
I'm very passionate about exhibitions. I think it is one of the few mediums, if I was going to say the only one, but social media is the other one, I think, where you get instant gratification.
Would you say that's a threat to the exhibition industry? No.
The way the exhibition organisers are bringing in apps, both for the exhibitors and the visitors.
Okay.
Some of the leading organisers, you can walk down a aisle and there'll be 50 stands. And 10, 20 metres before you get to an exhibition stand, your phone will ring and it will say, in 10 metres left, you can find your ginger beer.
Yeah.
Overseas, you've got GPS tracking of people. Stands are sold based on the space where people go. It is very sophisticated. It's like shopping centres, as you know. Products on shopping centres shelving and the layout of that shop is not done by accident. Everything is extremely specific. And the exhibition industry and exhibitors are catching up very quickly.
So as opposed to some of the industries who initially, when the social media started rising, some industries started pushing back against it, you've actually embraced the social media and taken it on.
I think particularly when you're looking at consumer shows in this wider sense,
yeah,
baby shows, the wedding shows, the food, wine, the cooking shows, even the mix shows, which may be a little bit of trade, but quite a lot of consumerism, is there. It's about engagement. And social media allows that engagement. It's not cold-hearted as an advert and with respect to the print media in a newspaper. The instant gratification, once you go through that door and the show's on. It's like being on a stage.
Yeah.
That exhibition stand is a shop window to your products and you are on the stage. And you're being judged by those visitors are walking past your stand. You've got 5 seconds to make an impression.
Let's talk about those visitors now, though. How do you know that the exhibition organizer is attracting the right person that you actually want to get a hold of? Because you don't want to spend 60% of your time talking to people who are not your core market or your core audience.
I think history of the show. Before you sign up, you need history of the show. If it's a first-time show, that's not available. But majority of organisers have long history. They can show you the demographics, the age profiles, how many children are there, how many older people, are they LSE, which LSE branch. Most organisers can give you that. If you're in doubt, go talk to an exhibitor that has been there. Don't forget, those exhibitors, some of them are competitors, but a huge number of exhibitors cooperate and launch together. Never go to an exhibition as an exhibitor and only think in terms of the visitor. Those exhibitors around you are potential clients of yours, or maybe they're potential cooperators, partners for that next great cell phone, that next great product or service. You've got to be alive. You can have an exhibitor on a small stand, 3x3, shell scheme stand. Yeah, maybe that's going to cost you 20,000 Rand at a show. And then, yes, maybe you've got all your time there. But if you walk away with 200, 300 qualified leads, you get the best return you can ever have. Don't go on holiday. A lot of exhibitors, particularly if you go overseas, or you will spend a week there, you go on a skiing trip or you go on a fishing trip, and 2 weeks later you get back to the stand, and next week you empty your inbox, you move on. Those leads you've gathered, that 20,000, you might as well put a bucket of money in the middle of the aisle and said, people take it. You would get more feedback from that. You talked about social media. Some of the cleverer exhibitors have somebody in the backstage. You collect the business card, it's handed in, and immediately that data is collected. That exhibitor, top of the mind recall, at the end of the day, even an hour before the show closes, they get an SMS saying, thank you very much, great, this is what you're going to do, this is an action, this guy's going to call you on Monday, we'll set up an appointment for Tuesday or Wednesday, we make it happen. Because if you're not doing it,
somebody else is.
Your clip said, that guy in the clip said, one of the downsides is you don't have a roadshow, your competitors are there. If you don't do it, your competitors are doing it. And that hot lead, that guy who has given up watching rugby or taken his way out to go and park somewhere, drive in Joburg, go park somewhere, enter the show. He is a qualified lead, not like a reader of a newspaper, because he's reading news and whatever. He's already a qualified lead. That person has done an action, paid his entrance fee, come to the show. He's qualified.
One of the interesting things that came up as well out of that clip was government's backing internationally. Do we have that sort of backing here in South Africa?
Yeah, the government, through the DTI, they have an export scheme.
Right.
They select various shows in various regions, South America, Europe, Asia, and in certain sectors. So not all sectors are covered. Mm-hmm. And regularly they put out, the DTI does, requests for exhibitors to participate in those shows.
Okay.
Agri-processing is a very typical top-of-the-mind recall that they've targeted. You can get a significant portion of your costs, your travel fees, your exhibit fees, your accommodation fees, all those costs covered by the DTI. If you fall within a targeted sector and if you are targeting exporting to the a particular region.
Right.
If you say, I want to go to the Ukraine,
mm-hmm.
maybe the government won't help you because it's not high on the government list.
But if there's an agri-processing exhibition happening in Shanghai in China,
you'd see a lot of support for China.
Okay.
The BRIC countries,
yeah.
You see a lot of support coming out of that. Yes, and typically certain areas. You're not going to take coals to Newcastle. Mm. But if we've got an advantage, or if it's an industry where the government's prioritised for employment, then you will see the support there. The DTI do that.
There would probably be a fair amount of people watching the show who have never exhibited in their lives before. They may have their own small business. They may be looking at opening their own small business. How do I start? I've got these glasses that I'm making now. They're not just ordinary like this because they're specially engraved, and they're absolutely wonderful. I think they do. They're marvelous, and they're going to sell millions of these things. How do I start engaging with you about where I go from here? Does the association have a platform where you can advise people as to who they should be speaking to?
The association has a list of events,
okay.
A list of shows. I think you've got to do your homework. Okay, anything in business. Are you targeting the consumer or are you talking to business?
Okay.
First, don't go on a show when you want to talk trade and don't get confused. 10,000 visitors, you're not talking to the trade, probably. You are talking to consumer shows.
Right.
So you need to do your homework. You need to say, I am talking to the trade. Anybody who is then looking for consumer shows, that falls away.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Trade, consumer. Then you've got to say size, affordability. Talk to other exhibitors. Maybe your competitor will say yes or no. Go and talk to the organizer. Walk the talk. The best one would be actually visit the show. Some of the Barber and Darber this weekend at Santa, they run the same show in Cape Town, in Durban, in Bloemfontein, in various centres. Before you make that step, go visit the show. Walk as a visitor. See what the visitor on the reaction. See who's there, whose competitors are there. Take baby steps.
I would imagine that people are fairly easy to talk to at exhibitions as well. So if you are looking at exhibiting at a particular show, if you go along and start speaking to people who are there as visitors and say, why have you come here? What are your interests? Who are you talking to? They would probably share that information.
I think so. I think a lot of people would actually, as long as you do it in a nice way, in a positive way. I think it's a way to do things.
Having just said that, how do you stop that sort of marketing happening off the stands?
In America,
yeah.
In America, there's a terminology, suitcasing. Mm-hmm. Organisers. And I don't mind if we're in this country or in Japan or in America, we take a dim view to suitcasing. Suitcasing is where a non-exhibitor walks the floor and sells without supporting the show.
Yeah.
The show organisers have immense expenses and over a period of time. That show's been planned for 6 months or 9 months. You cannot I don't think you can organise and launch a show within 6 weeks. That would be a very clear signal to me, don't participate. Take a step backwards, see how it happens, then maybe come into the next one. You need time to book advertising, marketing, plan, sell. So I think most people on the shop floor on an exhibition, extrovert, if you are an introvert,
it's not the place for you.
I think you will have a problem engaging with the visitors, potentially. You've got to be an exhibitionist.
That's why they call it an exhibition.
Yeah.
It's actually quite simple, isn't it? Nigel, thank you very much for your time.